So welcome to the desk of the Executive Director on this Monday. And we're very grateful to have you here. It's been a pretty busy week at Back Bay Mission. We have done backpacks for people who are in shelter experiencing homelessness, a Christmas party, a raffle. We've had distributed baskets, Christmas baskets for food for families that are in need. And so there's been a lot happening and a lot going on. So we welcome you to this session. Today, though, because we are post-Christmas, once you're watching this, and we're in kind of that strange middle week, right, between Christmas and New Year's, I wanted to talk about a date in particular that comes up, which is December 29th. And that is the anniversary of Wounded Knee Massacre. And I think it's always important around the holidays, around Christmas, around the New Year's to really do some inventory taking, right? I think in the past, we've always made a lot of kind of promises or New Year's resolutions as we embarked upon the new year. I'm really not hearing people talk about resolutions this year, and that could be because we're in year 2 of COVID, or are we moving into 3? And I think it might be difficult for people because we're kind of a bit more stuck, right? There isn't a lot of flexibility because of COVID. But I would like you to think about this as far as a resolution and maybe a mental and a heart check for yourself. Wounded Knee was something that has this really historical significance for Indigenous folks and for us in this country of America. It was December 29th, 1890. When there was an incident known as the Wounded Knee Massacre. Some of you may have remember and may have heard about that in history. Some of you, maybe it's a part of the canceled history, I'm not sure. But it was the cavalry, 7th Cavalry, killed more than 300 men, women, and children who were being relocated to the Sioux Reservation at Pine Ridge. And then there was another event at Wounded Knee, or at the Wounded Knee Massacre site, on February 27, 1973, there was kind of a holdout with the American Indian movement. It's called AIM, where they occupied the Pine Ridge Reservation near Wounded Knee to protest how the federal government and policies were affecting and damaging Native American communities, especially on reservations. And so there was a 71-day standoff on that same location of Wounded Knee, which was very historical, right? So it's December 29th, 1890, February 27th, 1973. Fast forward a number of years, and I spent a couple of months on the reservation there in Pine Ridge. And I wanted to share a little bit about that. But before I do that, I want to kind of go back to a book that you might be familiar with. It's Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, written by D. Brown, that was first published in 1970, which was a bit of a precursor to the 1973 holdout by the American Indian movement. In this book, D. Brown has a really eloquent, meticulous, documented account of the systematic destruction of American Indians during the second half of the 19th century. So having spent these 2 months on Pine Ridge and being there at the memorial, it's not really a very fancy memorial. It has a few tombstones, it has some fences, it has some kind of indigenous artwork. Actually, the quote souvenir curio shop that is close to it is shut down. The visitor center near Wounded Knee is shut down because actually it's owned by a white man who is in the newspaper industry, and he's been attempting to sell it for about $3 million, when there are many, like myself, activists who say, hey, this should really be given back to the indigenous people as a memorial so that it's theirs again. So I spent that summer on Pine Ridge and at Wounded Knee, and there is definitely a palpable energy there. A palpable energy. And what I was doing there was working specifically with youth and with students at the Ogallala College, these amazing, resilient young people. The Ogallala Lakota College is a public tribal land grant community college on the reservation. And the challenge is that most of educational institutions on reservations are really substandard education, very poor education. And they were finding that students would graduate from high school, seniors go on to colleges in the States off the reservation. They weren't actually able to succeed, and they would often drop out after the first semester simply because their education was so poor they couldn't keep up. And so that's another issue to keep in mind. So this Lakota College, Ogallala Lakota College on the reservation, enrolls about 1,400 students, and they attend this before they attend the traditional university. So I had so many amazing, great conversations with those who were educators there, all from the Lakota campuses, all from the Lakota reservation or from other reservations that were committed to teaching and helping inspire these young people to go on to college. So the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation has a population of about 26,000, and it covers well over 3,500 square miles in southwestern South Dakota. It's kind of located in that corner of South Dakota, somewhat near Rapid City, about 100 miles from Rapid City. It's near the Black Hills. It's flanked by the Badlands National Park, and it's some of these incredibly beautifully green rolling hills. The challenge is that this is really the largest and indeed the poorest reservation in the United States. I think for me it was an opportunity to connect with younger indigenous folks. There's a very high suicide rate, a high rate of alcoholism on the reservation, a suicide rate especially for younger people, and so much of the work was working with younger activists that were doing suicide prevention. But on the other hand, what I found is an incredibly vibrant indigenous culture, really talented artists, talented storytellers, talented writers, young people, old people. And I had opportunities to be a part of opportunity to really be a part of some of their dances eventually. Took some time for them to trust me, some of their sweat lodges, and really to kind of experience these really spirited, spiritual people. I think they're more spiritual in many ways than those of us who live in kind of our American cultures, our European cultures, right? Because this indigenous culture is so grateful for the land upon which they walk. And this is one of the few reservations where actually the Lakota people did originally reside. And there's just incredible, beautiful stories of how they understand Great Spirit and how Great Spirit comes to them, where they go to Great Spirit. The Great Spirit is often given much thanks and gratitude when there's an animal that is killed or when there's a crop in the field in the fall, and they have a beautiful bumper crop. It's just amazing how their connection to Spirit, their connection to Sun, their connection to the earth is so deep and so rich, and I think something we've lost. But what I also found is that on the Pine Ridge Reservation, as on many reservations, the life expectancy of men was about 47 years. For women it was 55 years, so much lower than the rest of the populations around the reservation. There was an 89% unemployment rate, at least in 2018. Not because individuals who are on those reservations do not want to work, but they don't have jobs. There's no industry. There's no opportunities. And they oftentimes, because they're living in poverty, they don't have the ability to travel to nearby towns or cities. And with that labor force of almost 30,000, there were just about 3,200 people that were employed when I was there. And then I would hear about the per capita income for people living on the Pine Ridge Reservation was around $7,000. The average for most reservations is $10,500. The average in the United States is $27,500. So the poverty rate is really, really deep there on Pine Ridge. And it's suggested that the poverty rate is about 80%. So why am I sharing all this? Primarily because December 29th is the anniversary of Wounded Knee Memorial. And I would like you to think about, send energy to our indigenous community. We have so many indigenous people across our land. Even though in many ways in these massacres and the American government and the original colonists really tried to snuff out these communities, but they weren't able to because they're resilient, they're strong, they're amazing, profoundly amazing and strong. And so here in Mississippi, we have a couple of bands of indigenous folks on a couple of smaller reservations. I moved here from Phoenix, and Arizona has huge reservations, especially the Navajo. And just keep in mind and send energy to these folks during this kind of middle week, right? As we begin a new year and as we celebrate Christmas. I want to share in closing a quote from Barack Obama. And you'll see why I'm sharing this quote once I get to the end of the quote. But Barack Obama said, "It's not enough to celebrate the ideals that we're built on in America, such as liberty and justice and equality for all. Those just can't be words on paper. The work of every generation is to make those words mean something concrete in the lives of our children. And we won't get there as long as the kids in Baltimore and Ferguson or New York or Appalachia or in the Mississippi Delta or in the Pine Ridge Reservation believe that their lives are somehow worthless." And isn't that truth? In these many places in our country where there are people that are living in poverty, where they're living unsheltered, where there's desperation, somehow they feel like they are less than or worthless. It mentions in this quote from Obama, it mentions our own Mississippi Delta here. It mentions Pine Ridge Reservation. It mentions Ferguson. And so somehow it's important for us, and I think again during this middle week that always feels a bit strange between New Year's and Christmas, is to really remember the principles upon which our country are built and really do what we need to do to make reparations, to create a new reality, to create true equity and justice and liberty for absolutely everyone and not just for a few. But as you approach December 29th, I'd encourage you to really think about our indigenous brothers and sisters. For me, my time on the reservation was a time to listen, mostly, to learn, to open my ears, to open my heart, to experience this indigenous population, and at times to dance with them, to sweat with them, and to be present with them in their rituals that connect them to the Great Spirit that we all share. I would like to close with a prayer that one of the holy men taught me there on the Ogallala Lakota Reservation, Pine Ridge, and this is called the Sun Prayer. So join me. Great Spirit, our birther, our mother, and our father, be the center of our lives today. You fill all the emptiness of space. May the sun today be a healthy, healing warmth for us, that we in turn may become healers of each other's hurts and be the warmth of the sun for others. May it be so. Have a blessed day. We ask you to continue to support Back Bay Mission with your prayers, with your energy, with your dollars, with your resources, or come down and share some time with us here, building and constructing and rehabbing and doing the work of Back Bay Mission together. Thank you.